Okay, I think we can get started. I think people will can continue joining for the next few minutes, but let's get started because we're really excited for this presentation. So it's my great honor to introduce Dr. Stephan Nolte. He's a pediatrician and a neglected tropical disease expert, and he's based in Germany. Dr. Nolte's also worked extensively in Rwanda and Nepal and India, and has a wealth of experience in all of these contexts. And Dr. Nolte is also an expert in medical ethics and the history, medical history and of pediatrics specifically. And I think, his topic of his paper, so from trench mouth to Noma, the experiences from the Nazi extermination camps, it's a really difficult topic. It's an important topic, and it's a very, very under-researched topic. And so I just wanted to say thank you to him for doing the research and then also for being willing to present it to us. It's a very, very interesting presentation for us, and I think we're all excited and we're going to learn a lot. So thank you very much, and I'll hand the floor over to you.
Thank you very much indeed. So hello to everybody. It's amazing to see that you can talk to people all around the world now with these media. And so I sit here comfortably near Frankfurt in Germany, and I'm a retired pediatrician now, and I still continue to do some research in history, especially of pediatrics, as Elise said already. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm honored by the fact that you are interested in those historic aspects. So I will start with the main thing, that is, Noma is not a tropical disease. That's important to know, and it is not bound to the tropics, but it can appear everywhere under certain circumstances. And I will give you some historical aspects. Of course, Noma has been known for 2,000 years already, and it's nothing new. And I will start presenting a few data which why does it go on? Oh, yes. I don't know how to continue with it. Yes, sure. Okay. So you know that since last year, WHO has officially recognized Noma as a neglected tropical disease that has focused much interest on Noma, which has not been such before. And I need not say much about the papers which everybody can get for free on Noma by the WHO Africa division. And of course, you all know these data, but it's nice to see them again and to see that there's international interest is focused on Noma. And of course, you are all aware of the different states of Noma, which start with simple gingivitis and which can up terribly, as you all know. I will just pass by these slides. And now, if you try a bit to organize, then you have these necrotizing periodontal diseases in chronically and severe compromised patients, and especially in children, and especially when all these three factors are there: severe malnourishment, extreme living conditions, and also severe infections. And then there is a continuous progression from gingivitis to Noma. And this can be seen, as I said, not only in the tropics, but also in other contexts. It's only seen today in some countries and in malnourished, immunocompromised children, especially in developing countries. So it is not sure if all cases of Noma really develop only from gingivitis or if there are other factors. But because the vast majority of cases of necrotizing ulcerative gingivitis will not proceed to Noma, as we know. And if you see a normal baby with stomatitis aftosa, with the herpes primary infection, and you see how severe the gingiva is affected, then it's quite easy to imagine that under certain circumstances this will progress to really bad disease. But there is no real connection between stomatitis aftosa and Noma, but there is a connection between teething and Noma, because teething is a wound in the mouth, and if you have a bacteria and these other conditions as immunosuppression or measles or any other severe diseases, then you can easily imagine that it might progress to a more severe disease. And so the children are usually between 2 and 6 years old. As you know, that's the normal age where Noma occurs. And I think it has really much to do with teething, as it is true also for stomatitis aftosa. And so you know that the hotspot of Noma is really here in in the sub-Saharan region in Nigeria, etc. And as I said to Elise before, when I was in Rwanda, there are no cases in Rwanda of Noma, and very rare in Congo. It's predominantly in this region here, but it can be everywhere in the world. And this is what I want to show from a historical point of view. There's a beautiful writing from 1782, and this is a dissertation which has been written by Antonius van Ring. It was a Dutch student in Duisburg in Germany on the Duisburg University, and he wrote his thesis on Cancro scorbutico, and that was Noma. And there he in the discussion here, it says in this very beautiful writing, the distinguished features of the water cancer, which is not uncommon in England and northern Germany, and is probably of a scurvy-like nature, which I think is very important, that already 240 years ago there was a connection to vitamin C deficiency, are indicated by the real cancers with a great deal of ingenuity and good powers of observation. And then there is another very important work which has been done in 1828 by a military doctor, Dr. Adolf Leopold Richter. And here it's a monography on Noma, which is still concerning the history of Noma is still very important today. And his cases come from Berlin, from the city of Berlin, from the suburbs or from the slums of Berlin at that time. This is a drawing, and I will explain later why I show this drawing. It's a heel case of Noma, which has been described in northern Germany. And I show it because you see that this drawing can very well reproduce the differentiated color nuances in Noma, which were, today it's different with the digital photography, but before it was very hard to differentiate the different colorations in Noma cases. So that is the reason why drawings were made, and even at the time where photography was already possible. The interesting thing is that there is a disease which appeared predominantly in the First World War, which is called trench mouth. And trench mouth was a acute necrotizing gingivitis, which you can resume it in one phrase: gun care was more of a priority than gum care. So the soldiers didn't care about their gums. They didn't, and they had very bad living conditions in the trenches. They did not. There were no toothbrushes. There was no. They smoked a lot. They had very psychic stress and all this together led to a disease which was um, quite common and which had sequelas till a few years ago because the soldiers lost their teeth. And in the 30s and 40s and 50s of the last century, there were very many veterans from the First World War who did not have any teeth at all because they had this trench mouth on the Western Front. And of course, the treatment was quite easy in principle, because it was very much related to the living conditions at that time. So if with the good mouth hygiene, with the reduction in smoking, with the balanced diet, of course they didn't eat any fruit, and they just well, that's you know that one important case in history of scurvy was King Henry the Eighth in England, because he only ate meat and nothing at all. He believed that fruit and vegetables are very bad for your health, and he only ate meat. And he had a scurvy, and I don't. I wonder what his odor of mouth was with his six women. But that's a famous example of malnutrition or false nutrition and scurvy. Okay, so the trench mouse was a disease which was not only in the mouth, but there were also the trench foot oops, that's too fast. The trench foot, and that the thing was that the soldiers were immobilized in the trenches. They were standing in the mud and in the water. The feet were wet and cold. They couldn't dry their feet. They couldn't change socks, and so they got waterlogged and chilled feet, and the skin broke down, and swelling, blister formation, and eventually a bacterial infection would result, and fungal infection, and then gangrene. And in many cases, amputation became necessary. And the British recorded really a lot of cases, but one must say that many cases also remained unrecorded. I explain, or I tell this because to say that Noma is not really, or related disorders are not really related to the mouth, but also, for example, to the genitalia, especially in women. I will come to that later. Yeah. Now, this is a very interesting story because it relates very much to the history of pediatrics in Europe. On the right, you see Nikolai Krasnogorsky, who was a Pavlov student and who went to Germany to study pediatrics with the famous Adalbert Czerny, pediatrician, one of the founders of modern pediatrics in Germany. And he went with him he worked with him in Breslau and in Strasbourg on the conditional reflexes. And but he also wrote a paper on Noma and of the treatment of Noma. And here you see two cases in the progress of healing. And this was published in 1935. And this is the original paper. He was later one of the fathers of modern pediatrics in the Soviet Union. And if you can look it up in Wikipedia, he is a very, very interesting fate. I cannot go into details now on Nikolai Krasnogorsky, but it's a very interesting man. And I was very astonished to see that this neuropediatrician had also done research on Noma. And how did he treat it? He treated it with oh, sorry. He treated it with cabbage juice. And cabbage juice contains very much vitamin C. It's very healthy. It's not very, very well known, collard or cabbage juice. And with fresh cream and with sugared cottage cheese. And he said it's a disturbance of vitamin balance, particularly A and C. And he did want to treat it with lemon juice, but it hurt too much, and the children would not drink it. They would not accept it. But fresh cream, especially when it's cold, is also a very good remedy, which I use in stomatitis aftosa. I give them cold yogurt or cottage cheese, and then they can eat. And so this is still a good thing to do. So the next man I want to show you is Albert Eckstein. Albert Eckstein was quite a famous German pediatrician who worked in Düsseldorf, and he was the follower and also the godson of Professor Schlossmann, a very famous Jewish pediatrician. And he was his successor in 1932 was a full professor, but in 1935 he was chased by the Nazi as a Jew, and he tried to emigrate to Great Britain and to the US, but he failed. So then he had the chance to go to Turkey and to establish in Ankara a modern pediatric department. And he's really the father of modern pediatrics in Turkey. And he learned Turkish so well that he even wrote a textbook in Turkish. And he did a voyage to the eastern and central and southern Anatolian provinces and villages, and there he looked for what the children had. And he was very astonished to see that there were many cases of Noma in extreme poor regions, and he published a report of a few hundred, I think 380 or so cases. And he writes that before coming to Turkey, he had never seen but one child with this sort of orofacial gangrene in all his medical career. So he had a treatment model with the use of sulfonamides, which he described in the Annales Pediatrici in 1944. And he did not believe that it was related to avitaminosis, but he said, or in his research, malaria played the most important role. And he wrote that, of course, mortality was very, very high in untreated patients, and the treatment was penicillin, and then the mortality dropped even down. And since Noma as a childhood disease has completely been eradicated in Turkey. And this is the paper he wrote, and you see that he was able to write a paper in Turkish. Innovations in Noma treatment, that was in 1947. So this was a Jewish fate due to the Nazi takeover in 1933, and this had horrible consequences for in many respects. And one respect was, of course, that half of the German pediatricians were Jewish and had to emigrate or were murdered, ultimately murdered. And this is still a very, very deep burden on pediatrics and on the history of Germany, and especially also on the history of pediatrics, which is not much discussed about these days. But for Noma, the important thing is that in one of the concentration camps in Auschwitz, in Birkenau, there was a family camp which was called the Zigeunerlager or Gypsy Camp for the Romani. And in this gypsy camp, Romani were lived under very, very precarious conditions. They could live there with the whole family. They were not separated, the children and the parents, but they received almost no food at all, and their living conditions were very, very bad. The story is that in 1942, Heinrich Himmler ordered that all the Romani candidates which were already incarcerated somewhere, should even be transferred to the ghetto in Auschwitz, to this camp in Auschwitz, and they were put on the same place or same level as Jews, and placed in concentration camps. So this story of the Roma and Sinti is not so known as the story of the Jews is, but it was also well on the same level. So they were housed in a special compound. That's a Gypsy family camp, and it's about 23,000 Roma, Sinti, and Laleri who were deported to Auschwitz. And at one moment in May 1944, it was tried to liquidate the whole Gypsy family camp. And then at the end, 3,000 men who were capable to forced labor went to Auschwitz and other concentration camps. And the SS moved against the remaining inmates, and they were all killed. Most of them children, women, and elderly men. So at least of the 23,000 Roma sent to Auschwitz, at least 19,000 were murdered. There were 3 doctors which I would like to mention. There were very, very many other prisoner doctors, but I want to mention 3 doctors. That was Lucy Adelsberger, a German pediatrician and immunologist. Berthold Epstein, who was the former head of the Department of Pediatrics in Prague, of the German medical faculty in Prague, and Rudolf Weiskopf, or Witek, a dermatologist. These 3 persons were chosen by Mengele, by the infamous Auschwitz doctor, to do research on Noma. And this research has only very sparsely been published, and is quite unknown, and that's why I would like to present this. So Bertolt Epstein had a very, very curious fate, because he was very, very German national in Czechoslovakia between the wars, and he confessed to the what was called the German nation, the German minority in Czechoslovakia. He was of Jewish origin, and he was his uncle was another famous pediatrician, Adalbert Epstein. He was the head of the department of the German medical faculty of the University of Prague, and he was expelled from the faculty in 1939, even before the Germans invaded Czechoslovakia, because the German medical faculty depended very much on money from the German Reich. So the Czechoslovakian Ministry of Education had to expel him because otherwise they would not have been financed for the German medical faculty. He was very lucky because he managed to get a call to Norway. He was appointed head of a pediatric department in Norway. But when he arrived in Norway, the Nazis were already there, and they allowed him for another 2 years to work in a tuberculosis department. But then in 1942, at the end of 1942, during the German occupation, he was arrested and he was transported to Auschwitz. And his wife was immediately gassed upon arrival. And Berthold Epstein worked as a male nurse in the Buna infirmary. At one time, Dr. Mengele became aware of the renowned pediatrician, and he engaged him in his research and sent him to the Birkenau gypsy camp in return for an extension of life. So Epstein first refused and said that Mengele wanted to rob him of his soul, but he was convinced by his colleagues that he should, in this distance from the crematorium and the gas chambers, he could rather be benefit for other inmates and for themselves. And what is important, that Epstein did not participate in the infamous research on twins and the horrible other experimentations Mengele did. He insisted or Mengele left him to do some research on Noma. And the interesting thing that is that that Epstein was the only one with whom Mengele did argue and who could discuss with him. And he called him even Herr Professor, which is really very rare in a concentration camp. And so they established a Noma department and Epstein was the head of the department, and there were many other doctors, especially Dr. Wittek, the dermatologist I showed you, and Dr. Adelsberger. Epstein survived the concentration camp and returned to Prague, and that was very, very difficult for him because he had confessed to the German nation, but he was a Jew, and so he had very great difficulties in re-establishing himself in Prague, and he was, as the problem was of all survivors of concentration camps, was that they were accused of collaboration, and because they had survived. To survive a concentration camp is so unusual that there must be something special about it, and so Epstein was questioned and finally was reinstituted as a director of a children's department in Prague. So can you show the one of the descriptions which was given in the Auschwitz trial 20 years after the war of the Polish physician Tadeusz Szymanski, and he said that shortly after his appointment, Mengele's appointment to be the head of this of the medical survey of the gypsy camp, one of the hospital blocks was even opened for Mengele's scientific experiments, and I already mentioned the professor of Prague during one of the ward rounds. So there were about 30 places in this ward for Noma patients. And here's a description of the Noma cases of the rapidly expanding gangrene covering the larger and larger parts of the cheeks, and the teeth and gums and alveolar bones were exposed. And even for the veteran prisoners, it was really hard to see these patients. They were mostly children, but there were also men aged around 20 who were then sent to the dental infirmary. But the result of the therapy was very good because the background was that the other physician was Rudolf Weisskopf, a dermatologist. He came with his whole family with the first transport from Prague, from Theresienstadt. And upon arrival in the concentration camp, his wife and twin were gassed, but he and his son Robert survived. And he testified also in the trials after the war, and he wrote a report, and he studied in Noma, and there was one girl named Hochichkova, uh, who was a girl with an completely open cheek, and they were very astonished to see that after their treatment, how this hole became smaller and smaller, and eventually disappeared with the treatment. And but um, the thing was, of course, that all these patients were ultimately sent into the gas chamber, and when they were destined for dissection, they were marked with a grease pen on the belly so that they could be identified by the Sonderkommando, those who were doing the job to burn the corpses, and to sort them out. And then Mengele wanted the medical history, the description of the disease, the healing, and everything, and of course the pathological dissection for an intended scientific publication under his name. And he demanded very, very detailed descriptions, and Weisskopf and suspects that he and Epstein were chosen because they both spoke German very well. And Mengele took these reports from them at once, and they have since disappeared with him and raised much speculations. There has been a book on Mengele's suitcase where it was claimed that someone had found these papers, but that was a big fake story. The same as with Hitler's diaries a few years ago, it was a pure fake. So these manuscripts and descriptions, they don't exist anymore. And what he did, and that comes back to the picture I showed from 1860. Mengele found that photographs, even color photographs, did not really represent well the fine colorations and color changes in Noma. So he had at least 4 academic artists who worked for him and who made pictures of Noma, which have all disappeared. None of this exists. And here on the picture you see Dina Gottliebova, or Dina Babbitt later, a young art student at the time, and Mengele found her out because she made a picture on the wall from Disney's Snow White film on the wall of the kindergarten of the gypsy camp. And so she was supposed to make these pictures of Noma patients, and but there were a few others, but none of these have survived. There was also the camp photographer Wilhelm Brasse, who did photos of these Noma cases. But Mengele preferred these drawings because they showed rather the true complexion colors, which at that time were not able to reproduce with photographs. But all of these have disappeared, and the same is true with what Mengele had took with him. He had taken everything with him. There's another prisoner doctor. There are very many prisoner doctors, and there's just recently a publication has appeared on prisoner doctors in Auschwitz, where there were many hundreds of doctors working with these million of people which went through Auschwitz. And he described he worked in the SS Hygiene Institute, which was the institute affiliated to Auschwitz. And then he described that one day arrived a package with glass balls which contained the heads of children with Noma, and he writes, we saw our eyes widened in horror, the hideously mutilated heads of children, their faces ulcerated by gnawing wound, their lips devoured by never-ending laughter that no longer belonged to this world. And these were sent to Graz, to the SS Academy in Graz, where that was a special medical faculty um, for SS who wanted to be physicians. But there also the traces are completely lost, and um, there's nothing left of these terrible experiments. Dr. Leon Landau survived the war and went back to France, where he had practiced before. The same is true for him, that his wife and his son were immediately gassed after arrival in Auschwitz. That's all a terrible, terrible story. And the end was that there was a gas chamber, and the crematorium were so overfilled that at the end the corpses had been burned in open ditches. And this is the only existing secret photo which has been taken from these ditches where they were burned. Now, the question is, what has Noma to do with why should one have research on Noma in Auschwitz? And Tadeusz Szymanski, whom I cited already, said we often wondered why research on Noma was being done in our camp hospital, and we tried to find out from our fellow medical practitioner, Rudolf Weisskopf, whom most prisoners liked. One day he lifted the veil of mystery and said that the research on Noma was being conducted because cases of similar illnesses were occurring among the Wehrmacht soldiers after the Stalingrad defeat in the east. So this was this trench mouth disease, and this is why I started with the history of Noma and with the trench mouth, because this is the missing link between. Now, the thing was that Mengele believed that it's the reason why these Roma children got Noma was because of their racial inferiority. That was that was the creed of the Nazi, that only the Nordic race was superior to the other races, and the Jews and the Roma were inferior, and that's why they got this disease. And it's really a bit astonishing, because other ethnicities as Frenchmen, Russians, who lived very much in the same or even worse conditions, especially the Russian prisoners, and they had also hard labor to do, and to endure all kind of the typical concentration camp harassments, did not have Noma. So this remains unveiled. So the reason why Noma research could be carried out was because it was an important war objective. It was kriegswichtig, important for the war. And as I said, for Mengele, as a race geneticist, the interest was to prove the inferiority, but Epstein emphasized the importance of cachexia and stunting in this disease. And Lifton, who wrote a very interesting book on the Nazi doctors in 1986, but he does not give any names. So there's one doctor who is not named, and he said, why did the German physicians not think, as we thought ourselves, that the Noma epidemic was to be attributed to the misery, to the lack of hygiene, and rather than any other cause, any genetic cause? And the artist, Dina Gottliebova, who made the sketches, said that he was shown a very extremely investigated child, and very moribund from the advanced Noma. And so Mengele asked her, would you believe that this kid is 10 years old? And Mengele said, well, it's that kind of race. But he didn't realize that he did it to that kid. It was done to these inmates by the situation. And this is the conclusion that Lifton says that this pattern of blaming the victim was especially blatant in Mengele's Noma work. Now, what has happened to all these sources? During the Frankfurt Auschwitz trial, Aaron Bein testified. Dr. Wittek, that was 20 years after the war, Dr. Wittek wrote to me only a few weeks ago from Czechoslovakia. He's written a monography on Mengele and has asked me for material. Dr. Wittek has not written to me for 20 years. And it is said that Wittek has kept 400 pages on Noma research, but these are also lost. And Epstein, the team leader, who had this pediatric department in Prague after the war in Bulovka, never gave any detailed testimony on his Noma research, and which is probably the most abundant ever done. And so it was not published in any of his memories. And so this is what makes his role really a bit obscure in this issue. The only description of the treatment they gave was by Lucy Adelsberger, the woman I showed already. And she writes in an article which was published immediately after the war in 1946 in The Lancet, in an article called Medical Observations in Auschwitz Concentration Camps. And she writes in that there was an outbreak of Noma, and which was almost confined to children. They had these ulcerations, and that this did not deter them to eat everything which they could lay in your hands. The disease was inevitably fatal. And so how did they try to cure it? Professor Epstein, working with him, clarified the problem, and so it was by introducing sulfonamides, but the most important thing was a high-calorie diet with meat and added vitamins. So this is the only description, the only little remark which we find on Epstein's Noma research in Auschwitz. But what is also interesting that these slimy ulcerations were also found in other parts, especially in the vulva, where they were at first taken for wound diphtheria, but their rapid response to treatment as Noma lesions established then the etiology. So it is not restricted to the mouth, and that's why I also mentioned this story about the trench foot. And I don't really believe myself that there is a specific infectious agent causing Noma. I think it's really a multifactorial disease, but essentially depending on the living conditions and what the trench mouth epidemic shows, that it was also very much related to psychic stress and to those fear, and I think that these factors also play an important role in Noma. So yes, it's already on the annunciation of the paper that I've written a little paper a few years ago in 21, where I refer to these experiences from the Nazi extermination camps, which is called From Trench Mouth to Noma. And for further reading, I have written a biography on this pediatrician, Bertolt Epstein, which has also appeared in English. where there is much more on Noma. Here you see him as a professor of pediatrics in Prague, and here you see him demonstrating emaciated children to the Soviet committee, which after the liberation of Auschwitz came and documented what they were seeing. So this is him here. And this is the post-war picture where he is examining children with all the his ward. So that's a very interesting story. And then just a few days ago, I was very astonished to see that in our in the dental journal, which all dentists receive in Germany, that there was just in the last edition there was a big article on Noma, and then I thought probably it's important not only for dermatologists, but it should be also important to know to see the beginnings and to the issue of oral hygiene and to have the dentists involved in the prevention of Noma. Well, that's what I want to communicate. And of course, it's a very hard story because it was a man-made epidemic in the concentration camp, and it was not only man-made, but it was German-made, and it was the Nazi-made situation. And of course, it had nothing to do with any racial or with any other problems, but it were the living conditions and the what the Nazis did to the children who had this large Noma epidemic, which has passed almost unknown and undocumented, and which is for the understanding of Noma, I think it's very important to know. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nolte. I'm honestly, I'm just heartbroken and saddened, and that just the true horror is almost too much to comprehend. These children not only had to, live in these awful circumstances, and then they also got Noma, and on top of that, they had all these experiments done, and then they were sent to the gas chambers, and even in death, they were experimented on more. It's the true horror is actually just yeah, what a difficult thing for you to have studied, and it's so important, and we're so grateful. For me, this has been just really, really eye-opening, and thank you so much for sharing with us. I can already see we've got a lot of questions. So yeah, if you don't mind staying on for a few minutes while we take those, I think
Oh,
everyone's
yes.
very, very interested in this topic. Yes, if
Yes.
you wouldn't mind raising your hands, I also see some questions in the chat. A lot of people saying thank you so much, and we'll definitely be sharing the recording of this because everyone's saying in the chat thank you so much. But are there any questions from our participants? Okay, maybe I could start with one and until we get some from the audience. I was wondering, us as a network, how can we, encourage these sorts of research into the historical aspects of Noma, and are there any specific areas that you think need further research, that we could encourage?
Well, I think the most important thing, and that counts for very many so-called tropical diseases, which are not really tropical diseases, but they are related to the living conditions. And so, as you see, the treatment is, that's to say, apart from of course the surgical problems which later ensue, but the initial treatment is really not very complicated. It's just giving antibiotics, having vitamin supplementation, having rich food, and there's no mystery about it. The mystery is really why in some cases of immunocompromised children, it is such a devouring and such a fast expanding disease. But we have other sorts of bacterial diseases like if Haemophilus skin infections or so, which can also be very fast and very severe. And I don't think there's really a big mystery about Noma because as you see that in Northern Europe, it has completely disappeared, even though those authors from the 19th century say, well, yes, it's common. We see this in impoverished regions and famine. We do see this, and it's interesting how abundant the literature is in the 19th century in Western Europe on Noma. This monography, which I showed you, 100 pages with a complete history and from a great experience. So we have probably lost this knowledge in normal pediatrics, and we think it's a very rare tropical disease, but that's not true. And it's
Oh, that's really
essentially
interesting.
linked to living conditions, and if you
Mm-hmm.
that's the same thing for many tropical diseases, and that just by having pure water and having good food, many of the problems we have and we run after do not exist. And that's what we should focus on. It's not on Bill Gates expanded vaccinations programs and so on. That's not the issue, and that's why also I left a bit. I was in the board of the German Society of Tropical Pediatrics, which is now Global Health Society for Global Health, because um, I, I found that the issues we are discussing in tropical pediatrics, they aim at the wrong thing because there are more basic things which are much more important. For example, I think it's much more important to to proceed to good oral rehydration program, which costs not which doesn't cost much, instead of vaccinating for rotavirus, which needs a cold chain and everything, and which does not prevent other gastrointestinal diseases like any other. So it's if you distribute widely uh, oral rehydration sachet, little sugar, salt sugar bags, which cost really nothing at all. And if you see what the Bill Gates Foundation, what extensive money they give for these vaccination programs, I think it's that's completely wrong. That's why I'm not anymore so much active in this field, because the conflict of interest between the big pharma and what people really need is so great, and so I'm a bit. I've resigned a bit from my engagement because I think we are on the wrong. We do the wrong things. We do the wrong things, and we spend much money for the wrong things. And Noma is a very good example how easily prevention and treatment could be if the conditions were different.
Well, thank you. Stu, I see you have a question.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Excellent. Right. Thank you very much for that talk. It's really interesting. I've just got a question about Lucy Adelberger's paper.
Mm-hmm.
She said in 1943 there was a widespread outbreak. It's the word outbreak I'm particularly interested in. Is outbreak suggests that it came and then went, or there was a wave of it, or it happened at a particular time, or so were these infections constant, or did they come sort of in waves?
I think the first thing was that it was so astonishing to see Noma and to see so many cases at once. So that's the wave um, which which expanded after a certain time of these disastrous circumstances. I don't think there's a special. There were no special waves, but I believe that. Of course, once there's one thing I did not mention because there's no proof about it. It was said that in this NOMA research, they did also inoculation studies. That's to say they inoculated healthy children with debris and with slough from NOMA patients to provoke NOMA. This is not spoken about nowhere. It is just mentioned in a few testimonies in the Auschwitz trial that this research was done, but there's no proof about it. But this was also one of the questions if inoculation of NOMA material will lead to NOMA. But there's no that remains a great mystery. And I'm really tried when I wrote this book. I really tried to find out what about Witek's Rudolf Weisskopf's testimony, and the mystery is that he has contested in Auschwitz trial 20 years after the war, and he continued to live. And he had a son after the war again, and this son is also a physician, and he denies to talk about anything of this issue. And the problem is that I'm not sure if it's really him because I tried to contact him, and first he was a bit interested why I asked, etc. And when I said, well, it's about this NOMA research in Auschwitz, then suddenly, no, I don't know anybody. It's not, you are on the wrong trace. It has nothing to do with me. And but I don't believe it, honestly. He doesn't, but it is his right to not to talk about his father, but it would be very important, of course, to know if this manuscript, which is mentioned in several occasions, if this still exists. Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's really, really interesting. And it must have been such a hard thing to research and get information from people. We have another two questions. Dr. Abubakar, would you like to ask yours? I think you're on mute.
Me? Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation.
Sorry, we can't hear you anymore.
It's frozen now.
Yes, new chairman, medical advisory committee. So in addition to what the presenter has highlighted, I just want to highlight about the transformation of the NOMA children hospital in terms of care of the NOMA patient. So actually, the hospital has been in existence for more than 2 decades, about 25 years ago, during which the pioneer organization, that is AWD, German-based organization. So they have been managing for NOMA in this facility. Also, after they have left, the MSF, along with in collaboration with the State Ministry of Health and with the Federal Ministry of Health as well. So actually the improvement we have in after the existence of various units that has been used for better care for the NOMA. So we have some important units that were established for the for better healthcare delivery for normal patient. So we have we we have mental unit in our facility, which was not in existence before. So the objective of establishing the unit is to provide a psychological support and the consolation to the patient and their caregivers. You know, it's not easy at all to see the kind of disfigurement for any child in the household. It's not easy at all, because some of the patients, especially the one who had a terrible disfigurement, they face some kind of stigmatization. So due to that, the hospital deemed it necessary to establish such a unit in order to render a cancellation, also give a psychological support. The disease is not a contagious at all, but some people in the, especially from the rural area, they may think that this disease can be contagious, which make it be transferred from one child to another. So in such a way, in providing the consultation, also psychological support, the hospital, our personnel, at least they are rendering awareness to the local community concerning normal disease, which is not a contagious, and also it's not a curse, it's just a disease. And also based on the risk factors, it can occur to any child so far. So, and also we have a IPC, that is Infection Prevention Control Unit. The main objective is to their responsibility is to manage a medical waste, sanitation of the hospital premises, and also vector control, as well as water supply to ensure adequate potable water. Also, the hospital also provide to reinforce the activities of our existing outreach personnel by reinforcing them with the focal person. So the activities of the local focal persons, they are really in the communities, especially here in the Northwest. We determine some of the areas or region where the cases of Noma are prevalent. So we establish such personnel. The personnel, their main objective is to identify any case of Noma within the community. They should refer the patient to our facility, to Noma hospital facility, or to refer the patient to the nearest hospital healthcare facility to take an appropriate action before establishing any sequelae. So subsequently, if the nearest facility cannot at least manage the patient, subsequently they refer them to our facility, that is Noma Children's Hospital. So actually, before currently we are having more cases of Noma. So be it due to insecurity we are facing in our region, that is Northwest, or because of the awareness people are getting. So any issue from the face, the people or the parent or the relative, they subsequently refer their child to our focal person or to the nearest hospital facility. If they cannot take care, if they cannot manage the patient, they can send them direct to our facility for better management. But actually, the level of disfigurement now is limited compared to before. So we may have
Oops. Disappeared again.
Thanks. Yes, I think we lost you, Dr. Abubakar, but thank you. Yes, you are doing such amazing work, and no, thank you so much for sharing that. We had one question in the chat from Dr. Ide in the UK, and he's asking, he's saying thank you for the work, and then he's asking if there were any descriptions at all of the changes
Hello,
in
can you
skin
hear me?
texture or color or appearance before the tissue breakdown or after the treatment. Was there any any mention of that in your research?
There was a disturbance. I didn't quite hear what the question was. Sorry. Yes, there was a one in between. Yes.
The question, the question was if were there any descriptions of any changes in skin texture or color or appearance before the tissue breakdown or after the
Yes.
treatment?
Yeah. That was the reason why he had these sketches made to observe the color changes. And it must have been a very meticulous work done by these artists. And but this is all lost, and I don't think even today with photograph you can it depends so much on the light and so on. So I believe that. This is lost. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think it's an important issue to look at these color changes. Yeah, but we are not today. We don't observe so well. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing all of this with us. It's just amazing and sad and fascinating, and we really need to sort of try to make the best of it, really, don't we, to get something useful out of it. And I was so interested in this because, in terms of what's going on, because I'm a periodontist, so I deal with it from the mouth side rather than anything else. So when you talk about trench mouth, that's interesting to me as well. And of course, the one thing that's sort of ironic is that in the UK now we're making sure that we have all these medical records and anatomy and teaching for people where we have patients and models with white skin and nothing for people who have dark skin. And this is the exact opposite of that, isn't it? We now unfortunately in a situation where lots of the patients have dark skin and we don't have the information for people with white skin, and that might give us more insights into what's going on and how we can try to make things better. So it's such a shame that we've lost all this information.
Mm-hmm.
It's I'm so grateful to you for sharing all of this with us, and it just makes you so sad to see what's been done to people and the like. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah,
Thank you for that. We'll move on to two last, if we could make them short questions. Sorry, we're already over time. But and I also just put in the chat box, there is the WHO public consultation on the addition of Noma to the NDT roadmap. I put the link where you can submit your ideas and your suggestions. So please, everyone on the network, I'll also email this over to you, but please do participate because they would love to know your opinion. Okay, the last two short questions. Dr. Ramat, would you like to voice your question?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Prof, for this emotional history about Noma. However, I don't know whether you research also the name, that name Noma, that has been ascribed to this disease. Because in Nigeria, especially Sokoto, where I work, Noma that Noma, that word Noma, it also means to farm. To farm, and incidentally, in Nigeria, Sokoto is the epicenter of Noma disease. So I don't know whether you research into this name. Thank you.
I did not quite catch what's the same name for Noma and for what?
Yes, in Sokoto here, Noma, that's word also means to farm. To farm, that's to go to the farm,
Farming.
So farming, yes, farming. So was it coincidental or?
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Dr. Barlow, would you like to ask your last question?
Mine is just, I think, it's just to commend the presenter. It was a wonderful presentation. I love it. I just want to know, as per the history, Noma was in Europe. Now, as per history, was there any conscious effort by authorities to eradicate the disease, or the disease was eradicated by a natural process as the progression, the advancement goes, the Noma disappeared? I'm inquisitive to know.
Hmm. I'm not really sure what if it was recognized as a public topic. It is only in the quite specialized literature you find this description. I think that at that time medical topics were not so much discussed unless there were epidemics, and there are no epidemics of Noma. So it was rather individual cases. So it was not really recognized by the authorities as being a problem of public concern. That's all I can say, but I should probably look deeper into these sources of the 19th century to see how they react, or what reaction was evoked by these cases. I didn't find anything at the moment, but that's an interesting issue to see if it was recognized as a problem of public concern. I don't think it was.
Dr. Nolte, thank you so much for this presentation. I think you have, really given us a lot to think about. And yeah, I was wondering if, possibly if our members do have additional questions, if they could possibly reach out to you, if you don't mind, because I think this is very new for everyone and very interesting and such an important part of Noma research. So yeah, if you would like to get in touch with Dr. Nolte, perhaps email us on the contact International Noma address, and we can pass along your emails to Dr. Nolte.
Maybe we should take one more from Dr. Bello, Saidu Bello.
I posted my email address, and anybody can, of course, can send me an email, and I will try to. I would be happy to stay into contact because, yeah. Okay, now the last question. Yes, please.
Thank you. So yes, Dr. Nolte's email is in the chat, everyone. So please go and copy that if you would like to contact him. Dr. Bello, please, would you, go ahead with your question.
Yes, I will just the Amsterdam, the Netherlands famine. That's also an important issue. I haven't looked into that, but of course the descriptions of this of the emaciation and of the hunger of this hunger winter in the Netherlands. One should look into these details. Another detail I did not mention was that in the other concentration camp, Bergen-Belsen, which was liberated only on 25th of April 1945, where there were hundreds and hundreds of extremely emaciated persons. There were Noma cases which have been described by a dentist. Only in young women, in women between 20 and 30. And this is an interesting publication which I did not find in original, but I can put it also here in the chat if you want, because there were no children affected and no men affected, but only young women. But these were also in a really very, very, very bad state, and many of them died after liberation. Of course, you will understand that for me it's really quite hard to speak as a German physician about what German physicians have done, and but I think. Why not speak up, and why not but it's not easy for me, I must admit. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks. Dr. Bello, did you have a question or your hands down? No, I'm not
No,
sure.
I think the hands is down, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Nolte, and thank you everyone for attending and for spending some extra time with us. I think everyone was so fascinated. You'll probably be inundated with emails. And yeah, thank you for your important work. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmad.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Dr. Nolte. You can see all the comments in the comment boxes saying thank you. It was really interesting, really fascinating. I think the thing about our network is we're trying to bring people together because sometimes published articles, maybe they, sort of get lost in the ether. And so I think, but you can see there's such interest for your work. So really, we really appreciate you taking the time. It was absolutely fascinating. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. And also thank you for inviting me for this talk. I'm really, I'm really amazed how the interest is, and it would be nice to see where all these people come from. It is not given.
Yes. I can actually send you a little breakdown, but we had close to 50 people, 49 people. So 50 people attend, which is very big. We only started our network in January. We started with 5 people and now it's expanded. So you see there is interest in this work and it is appreciated and it's necessary, So no, thank you.
Okay.
I'll send you a little a screenshot of where everyone came from.
Okay, thank you. Okay, bye then. Goodbye.
Bye. Bye, Dr. Bala.